If you can hear me, that's fine.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, we can hear you.
This is like crazy. We are broadcasting now, just so you know. Yeah, attendees are coming on now.
Great.
Okay. Okay.
I think we're just missing Sarah on the panelist side.
Yeah, let me make sure if I can make sure, see if she comes up as an attendee. Okay. More promote to panelists. Okay, there's David. And let me see if I can see Sarah. Oh, goodness. I don't see Sarah yet, so.
You know what? Sarah might be at the, you might have done her personal email. Oh, there she is. Perfect.
Yeah, we got it. But we'll deal with the videos later, so I apologize for that. We've got about 66 attendees thus far, so people are still joining. I think that when Davina left as a host, I think it shut it down, and so now people are going to rejoin.
Oh, great.
So,
All right. I just want to confirm, Sarah, can you hear us? My screen just shows a black box. Oh, there she is. Connecting to audio. Okay.
Oh, no.
No, we hear you.
We
I
hear
know,
you.
but I can't start my video.
No, none of us can. Don't worry.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's all good.
we'll make it through.
Yeah.
We're being
Okay.
flexible. We're being flexible.
It's only the 5th time I've gone to that link.
I know. Don't
I
worry.
apologize.
We're here. We're
No,
on the other
Raquel,
side.
it's not you.
No, we're going to move forward. Okay, it's 5:16, and I see attendees are still joining. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being patient with us as we work through this technology challenges. And this is our July meeting, which we don't normally, at least in the 7 years I've been on this board, ever had a July meeting. So this is something new, but obviously in these unprecedented times, we felt like it was warranted. So it's not going to be a full meeting, I think, like we're used to seeing on our normal monthly meetings, but it's definitely meaty enough. So let's get started. I think we're going to get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I know none of us can be seen except Raquel. So Raquel can be the one actually standing and looking at a flag if you're close by. And I'll lead everyone. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Now the problem is going to be, guys, is that we're not going to be able to see hands being raised for doing motions. So it's just going to have to all be verbal today. So is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Great.
Second.
Thank you, David. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, this is getting used to this. Okay, review the norms. And I think we all have copies of the norms, the governance team's norms. Does anyone else want to read them today, or I'm happy to do so as well? Anyone?
Go ahead, Heather, you're so good at it.
Okay, you know, I'll go, I have it right here in front of me. Okay, so these are the governance team norms. And for everyone who's listening, these are the norms that we read before all of our meetings. So we agree to focus on the best interest of all students at every grade level. Work together as a governance team to set direction for the district. Come prepared and be fully present and engaged. Do not interrupt. Avoid side conversations. Listen with empathy. Be mindful of your assumptions. Engage in dialogue before debate. Commit to constructive conflict. Exhibit positive body language, mannerisms, and tone of voice. Maintain and protect impartiality and confidentiality. Commit to no surprises. Conduct all board business in board meetings. And respect and support board decisions. Speak with one voice regarding board decisions. Okay, moving on to focus on district goals. Raquel?
Yes, so Tonight we've got, I believe that we are focusing on all of our goals this evening. We're going to be speaking a bit about finance. You'll see we have our 45-day revision. Also with some of the updates related to the return to school, we'll be dealing with or addressing some areas around professional development and support for our staff and our students, and then also addressing the achievement gap and the academic rigor for our students here in Kentwood.
Great, thanks, Raquel. Next up, report from closed session. Sarah, is there anything to report from closed session?
There is nothing to report from closed session.
Great, thank you. And we're going to move into public comment. And just before I do that, I did notice something in the chat from Amy Yamashiro. Raquel, she said, try clicking on the more at the bottom of the participants panel. There should be a menu item, allow panelists start video.
Yeah, I looked at it and it's not there.
Okay.
We're just going to keep going.
Okay, no, all good. And just moving forward, I know this is going to be challenging for all of us board members. I think just to be clear, I've asked Sarah if she could be the timekeeper for any comments that come through on public comment or throughout the meeting. And then David's going to be managing on the attendees in the chat when hands are raised and also when chats come through the chat thread. And just for clarity, I know among us board members, normally, of course, I'd like to just call on people as their hands are raised. So I think we're just gonna have to make an effort tonight to just, interrupt me, or we'll just figure, ways to keep making sure that everyone has an opportunity to be heard. And I'll probably be calling on people a lot too, just for, to make sure that we don't skip over anyone. So with that said, let's move into public comment. And so this is the section of the meeting where the public may direct questions or comments related to school business to the board and superintendent concerning matters not on the agenda. No action may be taken by the board unless the matter is placed on a subsequent agenda. A person wishing to be heard by the board shall first be recognized by the president and shall then proceed to comment as briefly as the subject permits. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board on each agenda item. The board shall limit the total time for public input on each item to 20 minutes. With board consent, the president may increase or decrease the time allowed for public presentation depending on the topic and the number of persons wishing to be heard. So with that said, is there anyone who would like to address the board? And again, these are for items not currently on the agenda.
Heather Celeste Perez has her hand up.
Great, Celeste, welcome. Raquel, I think you're on mute. Yeah.
There we go. Celeste should be able to talk.
Okay,
I
I'll start
don't
the
know
timer.
why I don't know why my hand was up. I apologize.
That's all right, Celeste. Nice to see you.
You too.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to address during public comment?
Heather, there's a question in chat.
Okay. Oh, I see it. Let's see. Will it be pass or fail again this year? Father of a 6th grader. And I think that might be best. I don't know. We normally just, hi, Greg. We normally have parts of this for the public comment or for things that are not on the agenda. And I just want to confirm with Raquel, I don't know if you're going to be addressing that as part of your update tonight, or if this is something we want to take offline and maybe you could address directly with Greg.
Yeah, or we can address it at office hours. I do
That's
not
terrific.
have
Okay.
a presentation this evening.
Okay. Greg, office hours, just as a clarification, is on Thursdays at 4 p.m. and the Zoom links go out prior. Perfect. Okay, thank you. Got it. Thanks, was the comment back. Okay, any other hands raised?
Heather, there's no other hands raised.
Great, okay, moving forward. Consent items. Is there a motion to approve the consent items?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Oh.
Sorry,
Go ahead,
Heather.
Sarah.
I just had a question based on our conversation earlier.
Okay, go ahead.
Closed session. Well, I don't know whether our conversation in closed session influences this open session item or not.
Okay,
So it's related to this, the situation is we are bringing forward a general education limited assignment permit for an employee to take on a position as a physical education teacher. And so recognizing we are starting our year in distance learning and that we may very well spend more time of the year in distance learning, just wanting to be sure that we are utilizing our staff to the best of our ability. And so part of our process through negotiations is really talking through how all certificated staff would be utilized to the greatest extent possible to support our students. And so we could see them in a variety of ways during the course of the school year to be sure we have some level of balance between caseloads for all staff. So I do believe we will be addressing the question.
Okay, so this doesn't require that then this is how the workload is distributed.
No, this simply
Not definitional.
Yeah, no, it's just approving that we are supporting this individual in getting this certification so that they can have the general education limited term assignment.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Any further discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Okay, the employee organization report. KTA representative, are there any KTA representatives here who'd like to speak? Oh, I see.
Brad has his hand up.
Perfect. Brad, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening to all. I've got a couple of things for you this evening. First, I suppose the hot topic that is on everyone's minds is negotiations. So I want to update you on negotiations, and I can say that thus far negotiations has proceeded amicably. We're negotiating a lengthy MOU to ensure the safety of our students and ourselves and to provide for the best teaching and learning conditions possible. And this is something that requires a lot of hard, honest work for both parties. As I believe you're aware, there's a reasonable amount of anxiety throughout the teaching community nationwide. And we are certainly seeing that here in Marin County and across California, and it manifests in many, many different ways. We have some questions about several items on tonight's agenda, and we'd really like to get some clarification on items K1C, D, and E. Those three amounts sort of popped out of the agenda at $75,000, $250,000, and $100,000 respectively. And we are trying to get a better understanding of what the intention is to do with those funds. I don't believe that, you can certainly tell me because it's your meeting, that it would be appropriate to be able to engage in a conversation during that section of the agenda. So we were hoping perhaps either someone on staff or the board could enlighten us as to the purpose and intent of said funds.
I'm happy to take that. So Brad, thank you for the question. First and foremost, when we do get to that part of the agenda, part of our action agenda, I actually will be sharing with the board and the public some things that we're thinking about related to those dollars. Kirsten, our chief business official, will also be speaking to where those funds are coming from, as they are restricted funds through some of the federal relief money that I believe I've been sharing that with staff, as well as the community at large, that we would be receiving it. And it's specifically restricted dollars to support learning loss mitigation. You may have heard our governor speak to a significant amount of funds set aside to support our students in this time right now. And so that's exactly what we're doing, is trying to identify some funds that we could set aside to support some specific areas for our staff, as well as our facilities.
So these are in addition to our, for items C and D, or pardon me, D and E. So those are not normally part of our budget. These would be funds that are not coming out of the general fund or what was previously allotted.
Yeah, no, that's part of, as I mentioned, Kirsten will be speaking to the 45-day revision, and that's based on additional dollars that have been allotted to the district, as well as to all of our districts across the state. And so we're gonna share about the 45-day revision, and then from there I'm asking for approval on setting aside some funds to support the learning loss mitigation.
Great. And the other question I have is about K1C, that number of $75,000. Will that number be adjusted throughout the year as needed? Members are kind of curious about that.
Yeah, so you may be aware, I think that is the one related to safety. So you may be aware that the board has already approved approximately $74,000 to support safety. And so we're at some level matching that to put aside some additional funds. These dollars do have to be spent no later than December 30th. So there is a time frame to them. And again, I'll be speaking about it more in just a little bit.
And just to clarify, that's also not out of our budget, but money that we've gotten from the feds or the state.
Yeah, it's all restricted dollars.
Great, thank you so much for that. And then lastly, the board really hasn't had any questions for us in a while, and we thought we would give them the opportunity. If they have any questions for KTA, we'd be happy to answer them to the best of our ability.
Brad, that's very nice offer. Does anyone want to take the opportunity now, or it might be something that we could actually collect any questions that come and then send it in sort of one email, if that might be helpful, not to put anyone on the spot right now.
Sure, that's absolutely fine. I will say that given the state of negotiations, I'm doing all I can to make my email as, shall we say, thin as possible. But of course, I always am happy, and so are all of our executive council, to hear and communicate, hear from the board and communicate with you. And I believe that's all we have for you. So thank you.
Great, thank you. And thank you in particular for that opportunity to communicate directly with you with any questions. I think it's a great opportunity, and we will take you up on that, like I said, following this board meeting.
Great,
So,
if you have them.
We may not have any, Brad, we may not have any, but.
That's quite all right.
Yes, all
Thank you
right.
for that. All right.
All right, thank you, Brad. Is there anyone from Classified who would like to address the board tonight and give an update?
Heather, I don't see any hands.
Great, okay. Let's move forward then. All right, so now we're moving into the superintendent's report, and I'm going to turn it over to Raquel, which will start with the return to school plan.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen here and begin my presentation. So confirming you can see that. Maybe just say yes since I can't see you.
Yes, I can see it. And I just wanted to clarify for all of our viewers who are watching this. I know there's so many questions that people have, and Raquel's been doing an amazing job during her office hours on Thursdays to address a lot of specific questions and give these timely updates as they come through. And so what I would encourage everyone to do, because I think we could, take up hours tonight if we were to go through everyone's kind of individual questions. She's taken the opportunity to group a lot of the questions she's received at the end of this presentation. But if there are more questions that come up and you think about them even tomorrow, please bring them to the office hours on Thursdays, and that would be a great opportunity to raise those. So with that said, please, Raquel, start.
Great. Yes, as Heather mentioned, what I've actually tried to do is weave responses to the questions into the presentation. So you'll see that. And again, the office hours that we're providing to our community, each presentation is adjusted each time just to address questions that are coming forward. So I welcome those and look forward to continuing to try to tackle the inquiries from our community. So that being said, where are we with planning for our return to school? So first and foremost, I just want to name, as many are aware, and I referenced it just a bit ago, that on July 17th, our governor released the pandemic plan for schools. So just in a little bit, I'll speak a little bit about that and highlight his five key components. Second, I will share some information related to school safety infrastructure and procedures that we've already moved forward, and we're anticipating additional purchases and infrastructure to be put in place. And then I will end with talking about some of the instructional planning, talk specifically around the framework, some of the instructional operations and strategies that we're planning, and the professional development and instructional tools that will really frame up for you some of those items that Brad mentioned related to the action agenda in just a little bit. So first, our governor's pandemic plan for schools. So this is posted on our website. You could watch the YouTube video. It's about an hour long, and I think it is quite informative. So he outlined 5 key points that it's really important for folks to know about. His first, and that he spoke very passionately about, was the importance of safety. And that in order for in-person school-based instruction to take place, it's going to be based on health data. And if your county is on what they're calling the monitoring or the watch list, you must be off of that list for 14 consecutive days before you can move to in-person instruction. I have received the question related to a waiver. Some may be well aware, if you've looked at the website, that there is a waiver that could be applied for due to this new requirement, but that waiver can only be applied to in collaboration with our labor groups, our community agencies at large, as well as our superintendent, and working closely with our public health officer. Recognizing that our local public health officer released a new update related to in-school instruction, I believe on the 15th, which clearly outlined the need to go a bit slower and gradually with getting students back on campus. I don't anticipate that he would be signing off on waivers right now for full in-person instruction, but in his guidance, he did talk about having small groups of students to get oriented. Not necessarily to come and receive instruction, but be oriented to our sites and our facilities to the new school year. So that is something that as we hopefully get our committees going again, we'll be able to dialogue about and see where we're at with making that happen. Next, the issue around the mask or face covering requirement. And so he was very, very clear that all students 3rd grade and up will be required to wear a face covering or mask. He highly recommended that students below 3rd grade would also have a form of face covering. He spoke about his son Dutch specifically and had the recognition that the younger children tend to kind of recoil a bit when they see their adults with these face coverings. And so the interest of looking into face shields and other things that could potentially help mitigate that fear, because it's different for our children. So I thought that was important that he laid that out. The third was related to physical distancing requirements and other adaptations. And so in this portion of his presentation, he specifically spoke to the importance of 6 feet physical distancing from adult to adult, from adult to student. He did not specifically say related to student, although it's very clear around our community across the state that the 6 feet physical distancing requirement is really what we should be following. And that's what we're maintaining at this time, and how we're looking at our physical spaces that I'll touch on in just a bit. The next, he spoke about regular testing and dedicated contact tracing for outbreaks in schools. So I think many are aware that the testing for COVID has been a challenge. And so working on getting more opportunities to have that readily available for specifically essential workers, those that are out there in the workforce performing essential duties. And so that is something that I know they are working diligently on. And the next is when the time comes for us to have in school instruction, that there is a clear dedicated contact tracing for any outbreaks. He also outlined that if a classroom or a cohort is shut down due to a positive case, and then seeing kind of that have a domino effect in other classrooms or a specific percentage at a school site, then the school shuts down, and then spoke to if a percentage of a school district or a number of schools within a school district have a number of positive cases, that district would shut down. So obviously there's a lot of formulaic focus, trying to utilize data to make decisions. And so I appreciate the direction and the guidance. And the last, which I'll speak to in just a little bit, is the issue around the importance of rigorous distance learning. He said over and over that he acknowledges, as a parent of 4 children himself, the importance of trying to get our children back in school, and just realizes also that right now is not the time, just based on where we're at in this health pandemic. That being said, wants to be very clear of the importance related to rigorous distance learning. Another word we're hearing, robust distance learning. And I just want to say, I know this has been a challenge, and I know many parents, myself included, want our children back, but we're going to do the very best that we can and work diligently to be sure that we are offering and providing the rigorous and robust distance learning program that we can for our students. So I thought I would touch on some of the things we've put in place. And so safety, infrastructure, and procedures. I just wanted people to know that I recognize that we are pressing pause on the opportunity to bring full classes or even small cohorts back onto our site. That being said, it doesn't mean we press pause on getting our infrastructure ready and putting procedures in place, because those will need to happen either way. So I just want to appreciate Paul Miller as well as his team who put up the plexiglass barriers around our offices. Those are all in place right now. We've ordered face coverings for staff. We've received a number of face coverings and face shields for our students from the state. We are working with our architect that helped support our facilities here at Kent Middle School, as well at Basage, to help support us with diagramming out and creating some schematics for the physical distancing in our classroom settings, so that we're sure that we're setting up 6 feet distancing, and identifying active and passive health checks that would happen. So for our staff as well as for our students, putting in hands-free soap and hand sanitizer dispensers that would be available, acknowledging the importance of staggered arrivals and dismissals, looking at our ventilation and air filtration. That is an area that has come up from our staff related to some real concerns about this virus being airborne, and just wanting to be sure that we have very good ventilation and air filtration. We've been in conversation with people that we've worked with in the past. Again, Paul Miller's supporting us and taking the lead there. We have some hand washing stations already ordered and set to be put in some of our outside spaces. I mentioned already the face coverings and face shields. And last but not least, the cleaning and disinfecting. So last spring, the district ordered 2 misters for each site that do very quick disinfectant. There's a picture up here in the corner of what that looks like for our sites. And so again, that was a proactive approach that our maintenance and operations team took to order that and have it ready so that we could quickly and appropriately disinfect our spaces. So I just want to reassure people that although we will not be having kids in our classrooms on August 25th, we definitely are doing everything that we can to have our facilities ready when the time comes. Next, I want to talk to the framework. And so I shared with our community as well as our staff last week, what's our framework for our going into the 2020-21 school year, and really tried to hone into kind of the key areas that we're focusing on. So I'm going to start with connectedness. I think that we can all acknowledge the importance of the schools are social places for our children. It's the place that they connect, whether it's they connect with enrichments like music or the arts, or they connect with their reading or their mathematics, or they just connect socially with their peers. We know connectedness is so very important. Hats off to our staff who's really acknowledging that importance and focusing on that related to our social emotional learning, and the importance from our teachers in recognizing they want to be sure that they are making those clear connections with their students. Second, I want to name that our state has shifted the required daily instructional minutes. So you may or may not be aware that typically the state requires an annual minimum number of instructional minutes. They have waived that requirement, but instead there is going to be a daily requirement of instructional minutes. And so you have those minutes outlined here on this slide. Third is the focus on essential academic standards through an inquiry-based approach. And so I just want to also call out, because people have been asking, are we still going to have our enrichments? Are we still going to have some electives? And although we are focusing on the essential academic standards, we do anticipate that we will be able to integrate and support some of these enrichment courses that we are so lucky to have here in the Canfield School District. The fourth point is around the social emotional. I mentioned that before, and the well-being of our students and keeping that focus. And last but not least, I don't want to not acknowledge the importance of flexibility and truly being ready to transition at a given moment. And I know this might trigger for people and make people anxious, but it goes back to the slide I just mentioned a minute ago related to safety and the importance for us to have everything in place when the day comes that we are ready to bring our kids back to in-person instruction, and work with our staff and work with our community to be sure people understand what the protocols and procedures will be, so that we can do that as seamlessly as possible. A big question I'm getting from parents and from staff as well is, help me better understand what distance learning will look like. My experience may or may not have been positive in the spring, and so I want to know, what can I expect? What is a day going to look like for my child? And so what I've tried to do here is give some examples. I shared last week, the state has been very clear about what the definition of distance learning is and what the requirements are. And so parents are asking, can I expect that my child will receive daily live instruction? And the answer is yes, you can. It is clearly a requirement that will need to happen for our children. And so I just want to I want parents to understand that that will be part of their virtual school day. So what I have listed here is a variety of examples. It's not an inclusive list. exclusive list of what you can expect for distance learning, but hopefully it helps give a little more detail. One, whole group live instruction. And when I say live, I'm talking interactive instruction that could be over Zoom, video conferencing. It could be over, I think Google also has Google Meets as another one people could use, but it would be a live instruction interactive. Guided small group live instruction. There's also going to be independent work. You can anticipate there will be ongoing student feedback. Targeted extension and intervention opportunities for our students. Recorded lessons with teacher guidance. Enrichments and specialists that are integrated into our schedules. Opportunities for our students to have peer interactions. Guidance for our parents and guardians. So I'm getting that a lot. Parents really want to know, how can I best support my child? And last but not least, recognizing that there's going to be synchronous and asynchronous learning. Again, this is not an exclusive list. It's simply just a little peek into what you can for sure expect for a virtual school day. And what I want to touch on is that distance learning does not all have to be on a computer or some form of device. What it really needs to be is something that's active, something that's multimodality, and that the approach allows our children to be engaged. It allows them to communicate and dialogue. It allows them to learn, and it allows them to create. So if we can take all of this and put it together, I'm quite certain we will have a very robust, a very rigorous program for our students. And I'm trying to communicate to our community at large the importance of let's try to have the confidence in our team that we can make this happen, and that we just need the time to really continue to dig into these ideas and be able to look at education a bit differently during this period of time. I know it's a challenge. I'm experiencing it myself, but I do feel like this more detail related to what you can expect hopefully can help out just a tad. I have had people ask me, why can't we, or why don't we have a full live day, i.e. run a typical day like we would and just have it be live over Zoom the whole day. And that may be an approach some are taking. That is not the approach we are taking in Kentfield. Feels like that might be just a tad too much screen time for our students. But we are going to have these live opportunities for our students. We are going to have these small groups. And so I just think it's important for people to know that we're really being intentional and thoughtful about the way we get to approach this new opportunity of learning for our kids. So I'm going to stop there. That is, oh no, I'm sorry. And go on, here we go. The last thing I want to touch on is related to the professional learning and instructional resources. And again, I mentioned just a little bit that there is an action item that's going to come forward to the board related to putting aside some funding that was identified by the state. But first I want to just name that professional learning for our staff as educators, this isn't something, I may have said something to the effect of we're just starting. And I want you to know that our educators are always in a situation where they're learning, where they're thinking about ways that we can continue to hone our craft. And so I've had the chance, not only am I operating these community office hours, but I'm also having staff office hours. And today I had, I think it was 63 staff members join just to hear updates and kind of where are we. They are very much excited to jump in related to the professional learning, excited to think boldly about how we get to set up our day so that it's most conducive for our students. And so I feel very, very much inspired by the team. They're sending me resources that they're very much interested in. And what I've said is, hey, listen, I'm all in, but it's really important that whatever we do needs to be systematic. We need to look at it from a district-wide perspective, right? Because we're lucky by having this K-8 district. How is it aligning with our strategic plan? And ultimately, those restricted dollars that we get to spend to support this area specifically has to align with our learning continuity plan. So some things we're looking at is trying to identify a unified plan and framework that has specific platforms that are utilized for all our staff. What's our time allocation? Continuing some of our work related to Lucy Calkins' units of study, thinking about our consultants with Momentum in Teaching. Social justice curriculum, we have a strong group of staff that have jumped right into this countywide initiative related to the development of some units related to social justice curriculum. creative mindset, mathematics, brain breaks, mindfulness, social emotional learning, equity and inclusion. We don't want to forget the work that we had already dug into previously. Right now, we have a number of our staff reading the book Stamped as a summer read. And last but not least, just maintaining this notion of inquiry and project-based activities. So it really helps our students dig into their passion. So I want people to know that this is an iterative process. We're slowly and methodically working through what do we need related to a schedule that feels right for our students developmentally and academically and challenging, and as well as meeting them where they're at. What types of supports are we putting in place for our staff to continue to hone their craft and their learning? And I want you to know they are all in, not just our certificated staff, but also our classified staff. And I don't want to forget to mention our administrative team. So I feel, quite lucky to be working with this team, especially in this very, very interesting time right now, because I know they're embracing this challenge and saying, hey, we're going to make this work. We want to do what's best on behalf of the children that we get to serve. Just excited to share that all with you. I'll pause there for questions.
Great, Raquel, thank you. For all of the attendees who are here, I just wanted to highlight the fact that board members, we do not have our normal videos up right now. Just because of the technology difficulties. But what I'd love to do, Raquel, if it's okay, is I think we'll go around with board questions first and then open it up for questions from our attendees, and it can come in through the chat or through your hand being raised. And I also wanted to just remind everyone is that we are having our weekly office hours. Raquel's been hosting them on Thursdays at 4 o'clock. And that's really the time to dig in on a lot of these questions related to scheduling and specifics about the plans that are currently being talked about. But if there are any really pressing questions that anyone wants to raise tonight, that's also warmly welcome, as is sending emails to us, which we've received many, many, many emails from our community today. And we do read every email that comes through. So with that said, board members, fellow board members, I can't see you. So if it's okay, I'm just going to go down the line and call on you to see if you have any questions right now. If not to worry, and we'll just keep moving down. First name I see up here is David. Any questions that you'd like to raise now?
Yes, thank you, Heather. A good presentation, Raquel. Thank you very much for reviewing it. I know one thing that's top of mind is timing and when you would expect to have more details on these things. There's always the desire for more clarity, and if you could just walk us through the next couple of weeks and when you would expect things to firm up.
Sure. So as Brad mentioned, we are in negotiations right now. So this shift with COVID and the move to distance learning, we do need to negotiate the working conditions and the impact of this approach. So we're working through that. I do feel confident that we will get ourselves to an agreement. I truly do. So that's just one thing for people to know that's in process. Separate and different from that, I have a timeline that's been pushed out that I'm really trying my best to stick to. So this Thursday, we are going to have office hours again for our community. I'm also holding a 6 o'clock office hours for our DLAC, ELAC community. And then I'm planning to send out a newsletter on Friday. And then the following week, I had planned to do focus groups that would be smaller for grade levels. I'm not sure if we will be able to do that. I'll know for sure by Thursday's office hours. I may have to push that out one more week, which would be the first week of August. And in terms of what I'm hearing from my colleagues too, because this is a process and we want to kind of take our time to get it right, we're giving as much information as we can in real time, but we don't want to rush it. And so my thinking is that more detail will be provided by that first week of August. In the meantime, I'm continuing to, 1, accept the emails, take calls if they come in, 2, have those community office hours to respond to questions. I just, again, continue to welcome the feedback. I also am trying, or not, I shouldn't say I, but we are trying to put together a focus group with students. I think it's really important that we get to hear a little bit from our kids in terms of what their experience was like and what they're thinking it could look like for them in the fall. So I think it may be very beneficial for us because, again, it'll inform our planning. And so my hope is that I'd be able to announce that and solicit those groups. And feel free, parents, to email me if you're interested in having your child participate. I have actually had some already offer up their children. And we do anticipate a survey. and a survey specifically because we need to know if we do have parents that will for sure when the day comes that we get to have children on campus that don't want to choose that for their child. And so, you know, that's kind of where we're at.
Great, thank you.
Okay, next, Davina.
Sure. Okay, so first I just want to thank you and the staff for just really taking the time to put together the best possible program. I know that other districts, and there's pressure to just throw stuff out there, and I would much rather us take the time and really utilize the expertise that we have and build off of you know, the experience that we have and the curriculum that we have to really put something out there that we can stand behind. So I know that it's hard, this kind of waiting game, but I do trust that we're going to end up with the best program by doing so. So I really appreciate that. Some of my comments, and not to be answered now, but just sort of to put out there, I'm really hoping that once the schedules are addressed, that we also think through and communicate a plan for parent engagement. And normally we, you know, have back to school night, we have parent orientations for families that are new to the school, and then we have orientation specifically for our kindergarten. I'm not sure what normally happens for new families at Kent. And then we also have parent intake meetings. And so through whatever format seems the best, I'm just putting a plug and a hope that we can have that parent contact in that small group with our teachers, and that there is a way for us to communicate those same things that just felt so important before about the learning styles of our students and things like that that we had done. I don't know what the structure is at Kent, but at Basic it was these one-on-one intake conferences that are really valuable. So through whatever way that needs to look in this space, I just want to encourage that we don't forget about that, and that we do have some regular contact, and especially beginning of the year contact at the teacher parent level, not just like the whole group communication plan. So that's my first thing. And then my second piece is I also want to encourage us to really utilize this as an opportunity to look at our strategic plan and to think boldly and to think about how I know that teachers that are leading the core academic courses are going to be thinking about their essential standards and different ways to approach everything. And then outside of that, I think this is also an opportunity to think about student choice and think about some differentiated experiences. So I would love to see things like a book club pop up that maybe, you know, a paraprofessional leads or other things that students can sign up for that maybe we didn't have the space to do so in the past. You know, a math challenge group, working on a certain project, or things that are, you know, optional, or things that maybe every student has to sign up for through whatever model. But I think that, you know, I don't want us to just replicate the brick and mortar day. I think this is really an opportunity. And when students are already challenged at home and doing distance learning, if they are actually motivated to show up to a particular, you know, 3-week workshop that they signed up for, I think we're going to have some success, and then maybe we could pilot some of these things and learn from that in the future. And I know that so much of our staff has their own passions, and this is also a great time to experiment and actually, you know, see what staff enjoy leading and also what, you know, gets students interested. So I think there's just so many opportunities there. So I just really want to encourage us to think beyond sort of what we had before.
Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Davina. Next up, Kwok.
Thank you, Raquel, for a great presentation. I just wanted to ask you a question or follow-up question on testing. The governor's presentation was helpful, but lacked any specific details on testing. Can you give an update on how the district and perhaps the county envisions implementing testing? Will it be done at the same site with the same type of test, or will we be relying on teachers and families to do their own testing?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've heard, I think it was last week or maybe it was at the end of the previous week, is that right now the County of Marin is switching the vendor in terms of who they're utilizing for testing, for specifically for contact tracing and our essential workers. And so setting up a system that they think will help streamline and also provide more opportunity for testing. In the outline that Dr. Willis sent on the June 18th, it said in that guideline that the expectation would be essential workers, teachers, staff, certificated staff educators would receive testing no less than once every 2 months, and that students would have the opportunity for testing as well with parent permission. So that's kind of as much as I have right now. I know the governor touched on it, and I think there might be some more behind some of his documents that he pushed out, and also from the California Public Health Department as well. I've not had the space yet to dig into all of that, but I do know that, as I mentioned, it's one of his 5 key points. So something that we're monitoring closely.
All right. Thanks, Kwok. Okay, Sarah.
Sorry, I don't think I have any questions. I appreciate, Raquel, all the thought and effort that's going into the plan. There are a ton of questions and comments in chat, though, I'm noticing. So I don't know whether that's something we want to put over to office hours or what, but just wanted to note that.
Okay, no, that's great. Thank you, Sarah. I think what we'll do is I just had one final comment, and then I think we'll move into David acknowledging all of the questions that come in on chat to read them out loud, and then we can decide, Raquel, if you have time to go through them all right now, or do a combination of perhaps addressing them in office hours. But my final comment I just wanted to make is, well, first of all, just to acknowledge gratitude for putting together these presentations. If I know that there's a lot of regular attendees to our board meetings and the office hours, and you'll note that each week these presentations are updated with the latest information that we're receiving from the state and local level. And I just appreciate how much time and energy it takes, not just by Raquel, but our staff and teachers, to keep our information flow timely and current, because it's, as we all know, this is a very, very fluid environment. So thank you for that. And also to our teachers for the commitment on the negotiation side. As Brad mentioned earlier, I think what we are hearing is a very amicable and very collaborative approach. And so we all appreciate that. I know I'm speaking on behalf of our entire district. The one area I just wanted to address, and it's because I think, you know, I've been receiving, as board president, responding to a lot of the emails that have come through since the spring regarding distance learning. And there have literally been scores and scores of emails about you know, families' experiences with distance learning. I just wanted to ask Raquel to talk a little bit more about, you know, we heard from the governor about the kind of rigorous distance learning and what that entails. And, you know, taking that with the state required daily instructional minutes, I think it's really important to acknowledge that, you know, while they did outline the daily numbers of instructional minutes, and you gave great examples of what that could entail, you know, it's not specific on those are live instructional minutes. And I just want to, you know, again, based on all the emails that we've received specifically from families starting in the spring, I encourage, like Davina did, as a, you know, community to our administrators and to our teachers to really, you know, think boldly and innovate during this time. I think we've had the experience of the spring, and I'm hoping to see, and I think, you know, based on the questions that we've seen come through too, some level of kind of like, you know, some pivoting and learnings that happened from the spring experience as we carry this into the fall, and kind of reimagining what it could look like, and utilizing kind of all the great assets that we have as a district. And not just, you know, kind of as, you know, I think Davina mentioned this very well, you know, from a student focus, we don't have to necessarily do what we've always done in a kind of brick and mortar format. I think it's just a real opportunity for us to think boldly and really follow our strategic plan during this time. So that's my only comment, Raquel, on that.
Can I say something too?
Yeah.
I appreciate that, Heather. And I do want to acknowledge there is a clear interest in wanting to have more, very much more detail about what the day will look like for a student. So one of the things I was remiss in mentioning that I think would be important to call out and name for parents, because it's been a suggestion and it is something that we're trying to do our best, is although we are trying our best to think boldly and not just kind of think of what a typical day in brick and mortar look like, we are working towards mirroring the academic day, i.e. like what you can see, like the time frame in which an academic day would happen, right? So just for people to know, in some level of having goes back to the continuity piece, but so that kids get used to their schedule. I know for, my own kids right now are completely off schedule, and I would say in the springtime they were completely off schedule. But my hope for our children in the fall is that they will get back on a school schedule. The school will be happening from their home in a remote way, but we're trying to be sure that we work on having them kind of get as close to some kind of school schedule as previous. And that reason behind that goes back to that point around the flexibility and the need to be able to transition, right? Because we can do all of those things and try to be as close to a school schedule as possible, and still think boldly, right? And think about student choice and different ways in which we can support our children. But I just think it's important for people to have that little piece as well, is that we are intently looking at that.
Great, thank you, Raquel. Now I'm going to turn it over to, I think, David, if you want to acknowledge I think there's hands as well as the chat. Maybe it's useful to start with chat and then move to hands.
That's great. I've got the chat. I've got the chat questions here. Raquel, there's a number of questions here about details of how the day is going to flow and the number of minutes. And we did hear that those negotiations and discussions are ongoing. So I think you can address those on Thursday and beyond. So that's to Kim and to Rebecca, specifics about timing. I'll come back to Tiffany's question on IEPs, but I would like to highlight something to address on your Thursdays, perhaps. Good questions from Crystal about how younger kids are going to get support to be on these Zooms and be participating in this distance learning when they have working parents. And I know that that's top of mind for many people. Crystal will make sure to capture these questions and make sure they get addressed comprehensively. There are a lot of questions about the timing of when information and details will be available. And I know there's a lot of concern here from Lori and from Laura B and from Emily about when we're going to know to hear about classroom assignments and classroom schedules and things like that. And I know that that's part of your ongoing negotiations. A very good ongoing continued questions about full-time working parents and some of the challenges that this brings up to them. And I know that that's top of mind for you. So thanks to Smita for that question. We have another question about specifics for live instruction being provided. And I know that that's a work in progress. So we are going to capture all these chat questions. I do want to bring one particular, because I think it is relevant to the discussion right now. What sort of extra support, a question from Tiffany, what sort of extra support do you foresee our kids with IEPs will receive?
So in the presentation I provided on Thursday, specifically spoke to the requirement in distance learning for our students with special education services and IEPs that they would be receiving those services. And so that is part of the requirement with distance learning. And so it could obviously look remote and live, similar to what we're seeing in our general education classrooms too. So I can anticipate, or you should be able to anticipate, that there will be an uptick in the services directly being provided to those students.
Great, and as I said to everyone, we're capturing these questions. We'll make sure that they get to Raquel, and she'll answer them as soon as she can. I know she will.
David, can I just touch on the roster question? That is another question I've received a number of questions about student rosters, specifically at the elementary level. And what I've shared back to folks via email is that we typically don't send those out until right before the start of school. Some shared it was maybe the Friday before school started. We're still on that timeline. We don't anticipate pushing out rosters before then. I understand people have an interest in having it, but due to shifts that may continue to happen, we're just not in a place to shift that timeline right now. If something changes, we'll let you know, but right now the plan is to maintain that timeline.
Raquel, one more question popped in here with regard to average class size when we do return to class. And I know that that's something that you guys are working on through negotiations. So I'm sure.
Yeah.
Stay tuned.
So for sure, and just for people to have, one of the things we've agreed to is to, for sure, for the start, when we begin bringing kids back, it would be at that the number of no more than 12 students in a cohort. And so as you know, our number can range 20 to 25 students. And so right now our plan is that 12 cohort. And really that has to do with our physical distancing that we're able to do. And that was the initial guidance that we received from our local public health.
And I encourage, I'll close out the chat now, but this is on this topic. a great number of questions that'll be addressed, I'm sure, in the office hours and as soon as those things are known. And like I said, I'll capture these for Raquel now. Heather, I don't see any other items in the chat right now.
Great.
David, can I jump in for a second?
Sure.
I think I just want to reassure all of the parents who have these questions. We are all parents in this district. Most of us also are trying to work and have our kids distance learn, and we are all eager to find certainty and a plan in moving forward. But it does have to be carefully planned out and negotiated with the KTA, and Raquel is working diligently on that. And I just want to provide an assurance that as soon as we have information to push out about specifics, we will. But going fast is not as important as being really mindful about how we do it and doing it right. And so I know this is an unsettled time and there's a lot of stress and anxiety. And I think most of us on the board are sitting here as parents with some of those same concerns, but confident that we're getting to a path that's going to really be the best one for our students and our community and our teachers overall, to be successful for the whole school year. And that's really important for all of us. So people with concerns, I would just encourage you to go to Raquel's office hours and ask the questions, but reiterate that we all really want to be able to give you those answers. We're just not quite there yet. So thanks.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. And I did want to mention, I think there's a couple hands up as well. Do we want to, we can take those as well. I think this is the final two hands. It looks like I can see, is it Megan? It's Megan Dunn, I think, who has her hand up. Megan, can you be unmuted?
Yeah, let me see here. Let me find you, Megan. Thank you for your patience. And here we go. Okay, Megan, I think you can talk.
Hi, I made a mistake. I didn't mean to raise my hand. Sorry.
Oh, no
That's
worries.
all right, Megan, all right.
I moved my phone. Bye.
No, all good, all good. Erica, I think your hand is up, or maybe not. So let's see.
Erica. I don't see her hand, but oh, here we are. Opposite. Here we go. Erica, you're on.
Hi, I just, first off, I want to appreciate all the hard work that you all are doing. I know this is a constantly moving target, and you guys have been putting in crazy hours trying to figure this all out. So first off, I just wanted to start from a place of appreciation. But I do want to make sure that in my role as PTA president, I'm representing the concerns that I'm hearing from parents around, as you have addressed, sort of when will we know so that we can plan. And so I just want to make sure that as soon as you can give families some certainty, whether it's, block off from 9 to 12 each day or whatever it is, it doesn't need to be nitty gritty, but as soon as parents can have that information, I think it would be really helpful, because one of my concerns is that we're going to start to lose people. Because people are so concerned about the unknown that they're starting to try to do homeschooling pods and, frantically applying to private schools and things like that. And so I just want, I want to honor those feelings of concern that I'm hearing from, our constituents. And I just want, with so much appreciation for what you're doing, to just make sure that even little snippets of information, once they become set in stone, set in sand, right? That we share them when we can, or you all share them when you can. So thank you so much for all that you're doing. And we really do, we appreciate that this is an impossible situation, and that you all, the admin team, the board, the staff, everyone is rising to the occasion. So thank you.
Thank you. Erica, we're on it, trying our best, right? For sure, trying to get information out there as quickly as we can, and committed to maintaining those office hours and responding to the emails, so that people just, we can give you as much as we can at that given moment. So I appreciate the interest and the importance of trying to get that to our community as quickly as we can.
Great. And with that, thank you, Erica. I think what we'll do is just to close out on the return to school plan, and obviously this is not the end of this conversation by any means. We've said it many times, but please come to the office hours. If you aren't able to make them live, they are all recorded, as is all of all of our board meetings. So you can always tune into them later. We are also very receptive and welcome any feedback you may have to send to our board, to send to Raquel. It's always valued. So please feel free to do that at any time, as well as any articles that you may read. We've been getting lots of articles, and just know that we are committed to reading every single piece of communication that comes through. So with that, I think we'll move on to the second item in the superintendent's report, which is the facilities and grounds update.
Great. So I'll just refer people back to the screen. So I just thought it was important not only for us to be talking about all its planning that's happening related to the return to school under this current environment, but just to name the work that's happening with our maintenance and operations team, all being headed up by Paul Miller. So the facilities and the painting. So Kent is done. That's been completed. Basich is about halfway there. We also are still working on the Basich re-roofing project, and that's about halfway through. That'll be done by August 17th. Rekeen has been completed over at Kent Middle School, and so we're still working through with all of our other sites. And this, just to remind people that this is being paid for through our deferred maintenance budget, right? So those things are just kind of moving along. I also wanted to bring up the funded need money that was raised through our foundation KIC, not this past spring, but the spring prior, and the money specifically to support the Basich play structure. And so we have some funds that are set aside right now. They're line itemed in our deferred maintenance, 96,500. And so there is an interest in trying to hear from the board about kind of next steps related to the process. Recognizing that this is a process to move forward with the new play structure, but the interest is in trying to acknowledge, the donors that put this money forward to really have this new structure available for our students. And we get that it is it's a heavy lift, but there's a long time frame in which we need to do the work. And so just wanting to put forward to the board about some direction on wanting to bring our committees together to really continue to evaluate different options that could be available, where we could access either our deferred maintenance funds. We have a balance of about 1.1 million after all the projects from this summer that could potentially support this. We also have the Grant Grover funds that could support. So it's really a question of the board. Do we continue to move forward with some of that planning and then bring a recommendation to our next meeting? Or do we just sideline for a bit longer?
Anyone want to respond? I'm just going to ask you just to speak up if you'd like to.
This is David Riedel. I think that with regard to the basic play structure, it's a visible, positive, and an important thing for our community. And I know we're going to want that in place when kids are back on campus and kids are back on the Little League fields and everything else. Knowing how long all these things take, I would support moving ahead and finding something that we can fit into our budget. We have the commitment from the community on this. I would support maintaining momentum towards finding parts of the deferred maintenance budget and the remaining bond money that we can allocate towards this to make sure that happens.
So
Great.
Heather?
Sarah.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to see this move forward, and I think it's a really important piece for us to complete. I don't feel comfortable with the current price tag of what's being asked of the district. Just knowing what we have left of bond funds and some of the other projects that are still on the radar, I think we need to be very careful. And I think the last numbers were round terms 200,000 from the district. That's a really big number. So I would love for the committee to go back and look and see if you can come up with maybe a set of 3 options of places we could look at different price points to consider. I think it's a critical piece for our community and for Basich to complete it. So I would like us to move forward, but I'm concerned about the cost. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Sarah. Anyone
Heather.
else?
Yeah, this is
Yes,
Kwok.
go ahead, Kwok.
I agree with both comments. I would also just add that, with distance learning, I don't know how long that'll take, but one advantage is we can do some construction and some work on the physical campuses, which is a small silver lining. So I'm in support of continuing the work.
Great. Davina, did you want to comment or?
No.
Okay. I just finally, I also support the idea of going back and revisiting with the committee. I think that's a great next step. And is that something from a timing perspective, you think this could be brought back to our August meeting?
Yeah, for sure. So what I feel like I heard was the interest in moving forward with the committee, bringing back to the board 3 different options that we could look at, acknowledging the quote, and I pulled up the deferred maintenance. It is a $228,000 contribution from the district that's being asked, so that is significant. And so I'm happy to engage in that work with our team.
Great. And just to remind everyone from prior board meetings, I know it was sometime in the spring, this was an item that we did discuss, and there was interest across every board member to move forward with this space age play structure. But I think what Sarah is bringing up is a great question. Obviously, times have changed, and it's not a matter of saying, no, we are not interested in this anymore. It's really just revisiting with the committee and to see if there are alternatives for funding. So I think that's great. Thank you, Raquel. Are there any other questions on this update? All right, I think we'll move forward. Okay, so last item on Raquel's report is enrollment and staffing.
So just want to share with people where we are with enrollment. I think I have the most updated numbers. The shout out to our Kent and Basich team for getting me this information. But you'll see here, these are the numbers that we have for Basich as well as Kent. You'll note that the numbers have either increased or stayed the same since the last time I brought this to you all, which I think might have been June 23rd board meeting. And then for Kent, the numbers have all increased, but for 8th grade. And so, so just wanted you to know where we're at. In terms of staffing, we have 3 open positions right now, 2 that we've been actively recruiting for. One is our special day class, Learning Center Plus over at Basich School, as well as a school psychologist, 0.8 full-time equivalent. And we have the open kindergarten position and looking at filling internally with that position. So just wanted you to know where we're at right now. Any questions?
Great. Any questions from the board? All right, I think we can move forward. Thank you, Raquel, for the great report. If there are no further questions, I think we're going to move forward to the action agenda. Is there a motion to consider the approval of the warrants for June 2020?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? I know there were some questions, Sarah, I think that you had in advance. Did you want to voice them now, or do you feel like your questions were answered?
Yeah, no, my question was answered. But I mean, just for the community's sake, I had a question about the payment to Ross Valley Charter, because in my mind, we had already paid them for this year that required in lieu of funds, but maybe what I'm remembering is that it was in the budget, but we hadn't actually written the check. So I appreciate the clarification on that before the meeting. Thanks.
Great. And I know I also had a question about the Guidepost Solutions security systems for $17,980, which were part of our Measure D funds. And that was also answered by Kirsten in terms of what exactly that was going for, because I know we had scaled down our original budget, and I was happy to see that is still in effect. And I think those are only questions that I had. And anyone else want to raise any other questions now on the warrants? All right. If no other questions, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Great. Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Is there a motion to consider the approval of the 45-day budget revision for the 2020-21 school year?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
So Heather, I want to have Kirsten come on. I have a slide here that I think it's important. You know, the question came from Brad early on, and I think it's important that we just continue to be as transparent as we can related to funds. And so I thought if Kirsten could give a quick background on this. There's a slide if people reference the screen right now, and I'm just looking for Kirsten. I know she was joining us today. So there she is. So Kirsten, you are allowed to talk.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, so thanks for pulling that slide. So I just wanted to give a little bit of history on the 45-day revision for those folks out there that haven't heard of it or seen it before. So generally, the budget that has been proposed at the May revision has not had any major changes. This is due largely in part by Proposition 25, which requires lawmakers to permanently forfeit pay for each day after the 15th that the budget bill is not passed and sent to the governor. So this year, the governor's May 14th proposal was to cut spending now and hope that the federal government would send enough money to reverse the cuts this summer. Lawmakers rejected that plan and opted instead to write a budget that assumes the money will arrive by early fall and only enacting automatic trigger cuts in spending if that doesn't happen. So as a result, the current year budget cycle is including a 45-day revision. So what we are looking at is our federal source of funds. So first we were looking at the 10% reduction to LCFF has been restored. That is unrestricted general fund monies. The Federal CARES Act, which is comprised of 3 different funding sources. We have the CARES Act Governor's Emergency Ed Relief Fund, the CARES Act Coronavirus Relief Fund, and the State General Fund Coronavirus Relief Fund. Total restricted funds, that's about 88%, are about $483,000. So the receipt of funds is contingent upon the LCAP that Raquel mentioned earlier. That will go to the board at the September board meeting. Once that's adopted, we have a timeline to spend the funds. 88% of those restricted monies need to be spent by December 30th, 2020. And then, of course, allowable uses. So federal funds have these contingencies. So allowable uses are listed there below. So in a nutshell, the good news is there's combined revenue increase of little more than $500,000. Does anyone have any questions?
I had one quick question. Do we believe that that federal funding is certain? I mean, I'm just curious from a percentage standpoint, is it 80% likely, 60%? Because it sounds like the state government's taking the position, well, there's a small chance that it could get pulled, but I guess for our planning purposes, I want to make sure we feel confident in the receipt of those funds.
Yeah, and I felt the same because there was also a lot in the news saying we're not giving you those federal dollars, but the funds are confirmed by both the county office and California Department of Education. So I would say it's 100% confirmed.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kirsten.
Mm-hmm.
Kirsten, this is David Riedel. Thank you for the update. Do you have any issues with the timing of the arrival of some of the federal money? I know there's been some talk about the state monies sort of coming in dribs and drabs rather than on a predictable schedule. Any concerns about cash flow timing?
Yeah, so going to the deferral. So this state monies, we won't actually receive the funds. So it will likely result in a mild cash flow situation, but we have that TAN in place. So we can borrow against future property taxes. So what will happen is we will need to move forward with purchase to expend the funds, but in the timeline allowed. And we will use our TAN to cover any cash flow issues. So that's something that the county is also closely watching. I've been sending them cash flow reports regularly.
Great, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else?
I have a question, a few questions. So just looking through, just wanting to get more clarity on allowable uses. So could I hear some examples of integrated services that support teaching and learning?
Student and staff technology needs, mental health services, professional development, student nutrition.
Okay. So like something that like goes direct. Okay. So you said professional development is like a teacher facing thing. And then the other ones were more services for students.
So the general allowable use funds are learning loss mitigation. So whatever is written in our learning continuity and attendance plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I guess I'm wondering, and maybe this is something to look into, but I know we have a lot of concern from our youngest students entering in who either feel like they, had a lot of learning loss because they were in kindergarten and missed, some critical time, and now they're going into first grade or entering kindergarten, so those younger grades. Is it possible to focus supports like in a grade level area because of the age of students? Or I don't know if like how specific or how strict you think these definitions are going to be in terms of learning loss.
Raquel, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I think it's pretty broad based on how I'm reading the language. So I think we have some flexibility. And if you're asking if we could provide some intervention direct service support for students, that most likely could be a possibility. That would be something that we would outline in our learning continuity plan. My interest is trying to utilize the feedback we received from the surveys, the ongoing feedback we're receiving from our community via the emails and the office hours, the survey that we're hoping to send out again related to where people are at and what their plan is for the fall to help again continue to inform our planning here. So yes, I do think it could be something that we could focus on a particular grade level. And I think the first thing we need to do is really try to do some assessment around that grade level to see where the kids are. And I'll get into a little bit when we go into the next action items.
And then if we currently have systems in place that address some of these needs that we're paying for from our general funds, can we shift money around so that, intervention or other things that we already had in place get paid for from these funds? Like, are you allowed to kind of supplant in that way?
Yes.
Okay.
Great. Nothing further, Davina?
No, thanks.
Any other board members? All right. I just had a question. This is setting up for what's coming further on the action agenda. And I know, Raquel, you addressed this when Brad raised the question. As we look through the rest of the action agenda items here, just to be very clear, items C, D, E are all represented within this 483 amount, right? Are coming from the Federal CARES Act?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then and then the question I did have is, when we get to it, is the letter C. I noticed like the 75,000, and you alluded to this. We had already approved about 74,000 in a board action, and this is in addition to that.
Yes.
For further, okay.
And
okay.
And I'll talk about it more, but yeah.
Okay. Yes, that's very clear then. Okay, so those were my only questions. So everything we're seeing in the rest of this agenda, because I think there was a lot of concern about the size of these numbers, but it is coming from unexpected and gladly received funding from the federal and state. Okay, that's all the questions I had. So with that, thank you,
Heather,
Kirsten.
sorry, one more thing.
Oh yeah, go ahead, Davina.
Yeah, back to the safety. I don't know if Raquel, you want to say more, but since we're not, I know that we got, I don't know if it was 2 months worth of PPE. So just based on like what we were provided already, our district, plus what we've already spent, can you just explain more how you identified the need for that budget item for more safety materials?
Yeah, why don't we go through those, and then I can speak to each one, and then you guys can decide on your approval process and taking the action. I can describe it a little bit before you go into the approval process. How does that sound?
I think that sounds fair. Davina, is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so if there aren't any other questions, I think we can. I think we're ready to vote. And again, thank you, Kirsten, for providing the background. for this item. All right, so if we're ready to vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving to the next, we're going into K1C. Is there a motion to consider the approval of the proposal in the amount not to exceed $75,000 for additional safety infrastructure and essential protective equipment, EPE, for the 2020-21 school year?
So
So
moved.
moved by David.
Second.
Thank you. All right, Raquel, do you want to, discussion. Raquel, would you mind providing some more background?
Yeah. So I'm bringing this forward to you today because one, exactly right. We've already set aside $74,000 specifically to support EPE and safety procedures. I just thought that we are hearing loud and clear the importance of safety, physical safety on our campuses. And so as we move through the process, I wanted to be sure that we had funds set aside to support what additional items may come up. And some things that I'm hearing is the possibility of needing additional of the plexiglass barriers. As I mentioned, we've put in a number of those in our office spaces. We've ordered some sheets that we could utilize in classrooms to put on collaborative work tables. I just don't know, specifically I'll speak to special education, for example. When we look at testing, and that is one area in which our local public health, as well as our governor, has spoken about utilizing plexiglass for staff to be working with students when they need to do some of those testing activities with children. And so just wanting to be sure that we put money aside to support those kinds of things. The other piece was around the ventilation and air filtration. And so a lot of concern has come forward related to what does our ventilation look like? What kind of not purifiers, but the, oh gosh, what are they called? That captures the air when it comes in. MERV 14, I know, is what people are asking us to get, but it's just really working with our environmentalists and working with some of our people that we've worked with in the past to look at the ventilation in our spaces to be sure that the air coming in and out is as clean as it can be so that people feel as safe as they can be in the settings. We've ordered, I think, 3 hand washing stations. So do we need more so that we have them at all of the locations for where kids would be coming in and off of campus? And then I'm not sure if we're going to want to get more of those misters that I mentioned before, which are, I think, approximately $2,500 a piece. So these are just examples of things that are coming forward. The state did provide us a number of face shields, sanitizer, hand sanitizer, disinfectant, the face coverings, but I just don't know what else we might need. And recognizing that, you know, our next meeting isn't until late August, I didn't want to be in a situation where we were going to need more stuff and not be able to move forward some purchasing. This is not to exceed, so if the board wants to adjust that we very well can do it. I don't have line items and projections for you all to look at today, but just wanting to, again, put something out there that mirrored what we had previously approved so that we could start to utilize some of these funds.
Great, thanks, Raquel. Are there any questions from board members?
Raquel, this is David. There's a timeline on having to spend this, right? It's at the end of the year, is that correct?
Yeah, so Kirsten mentioned 88% of the funds. I thought all of it needed to be spent by the 30th of December, but it sounds like 88% needs to be spent by then. And I'm happy to have her come back on if we needed to.
That's fine. It's 88% of the whole pool. It's not like one specific bucket.
Yeah. That 483, I think, which was listed there.
And Raquel, for the money that we've already spent for PPE, could we allocate that to this bucket, thereby freeing up the previous monies for, you know, next semester or January to March?
Yes, if you recall, we had already identified that we had some previous restricted funds that we were utilizing for that initial 74,000. So for sure, we would utilize as much restricted funds as we can prior to getting into any of our unrestricted, so we can do some adjusting to where those expenses were coded previously. So we will for sure will do that. And when we come back with first interim, we'll be able to highlight some of those savings.
Anyone else? The only thing that I would just add is I think that I like the fact that it's the not to exceed 75,000, which gives the maximum flexibility. And I think given in these times that we're in, having the most kind of fluid and being nimble to make purchases as we need to, obviously being very cognizant about what we're purchasing is the best route. So I would advocate for keeping the 75,000, the not to exceed 75,000, unless any other board member wants to suggest lowering. Okay, so I think we'll just vote as is. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Okay, moving on to K1D. Is there a motion to consider the approval of the proposal in the amount not to exceed 250,000 for the 2020-21 professional development and additional return to school roadmap task force planning for the 2020-21 school year?
So moved.
Second.
Great, thank you. Discussion? Raquel, I think we're looking at you. Did
Okay,
you want
I'll
to add
start.
anything here?
Yeah, so this item specifically, again, a high number, I'll just name that up front, but it's really to provide opportunity for professional development, as well as additional planning time for the return to school task force groups. So as I mentioned today, I had a staff office hour and we had over 60 staff members join who are at the ready to dig in. I feel very confidently about that. And when I speak about staff, I'm speaking about our administrative staff, our certificated staff, and our classified staff. Because going back to the strategic plan and the importance of utilizing all of our staff to the greatest extent possible in optimizing their expertise and helping support honing in on their skill set, I think is really essential, especially in this time. So here's an opportunity for us to leverage these restricted dollars so that we can put aside some significant funds to support their professional growth. And I also want to name that they are off contract right now, right? So they theoretically aren't due back. I want to say the first day on calendar is August 17th, and they're jumping into these things and ready to participate. And they're sending me emails saying, hey, can we get this Lucy Calkins program? Hey, can we attend this social emotional learning? And so I want you to know that as much as I want to just say yes, one thing that we are being very clear about, and I mentioned it in my earlier presentation, is that the importance of the systematic approach that is clearly comprehensive and aligns to our learning continuity plan, which will be directly tied to our strategic plan to support the professional growth and the planning for our staff. So again, you have the ability to decrease the amount there, but the way I came up with this formula was I allocated funds per number of staff members that we had, as well as looking at district-wide monies that we want to set aside. And these bullet points here list a variety of options. This is not, I should have put on here too, it's not exclusive, right? It could be other things too, but one, and you heard or you saw in the chat, parents expressed concern related to what is the framework, what's the unified plan, and we need time to do that, right? We need planning time for our staff to really come up with that bold opportunity for our kids in their learning. But Lucy Calkins units of study, social justice curriculum, the growth mindset work with Joe Bowler, brain breaks, mindfulness, social emotional learning, equity and inclusion, and really how are we approaching more of our project-based inquiry instruction.
Great, thank you, Raquel, for the background. Any board questions?
Heather, I have a comment, which I guess is, Raquel, I think that given that we have federal funds available that we can allocate to this, and we have such enthusiastic participation from our staff in terms of growth, I think this is a great opportunity. And obviously we would have to just defer to your judgment in terms of which programs and which professional development makes the most sense. Again, I know from a parent standpoint, a lot of people are sort of just anxious about the timing and when is this development happening and when is the planning happening. And I know that it's very challenging to plan when the rules change every 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So I just want to name that too, that, you know, we were planning for something that probably looked a little different than what we're now currently planning for. But I'm supportive of this and leveraging this federal money to improve the quality of teaching across our district, which will benefit us not just in distance learning, but throughout our years with our students.
Great. Anyone else?
I'll chime in. So what I don't see here explicitly, I know that we've had a lot of feedback, both from staff and also from parents about specific training around distance learning. And so my ask would be that right now that would be prioritized. And I think that, with each of these topics, I'm not sure if Lucy Calkins has developed in the past few months a specific distance learning plan. So I would imagine that some of these that are mentioned have specific approaches to distance learning and some may not. And so I think that our community also wants to feel, secure that teachers are getting the training that they are asking for, that they need, and that time and money is being put into that. And also that we want to feel like, everybody has the research-based, and practices that they can learn from, instead of us just kind of, reinventing all of these things, because we know that there's really solid practices that are out there with teachers that have been doing distance learning and programs that have been going on for a long time now. So I would add that onto, and it's probably just in your mind, but just not explicit on this plan as a priority. And there was one more thing that I was going to say about this. Okay, I'll stop there.
So, thank you for that, Davina. I do want to just take a minute to comment that you're exactly right, that we want to be sure that the training that we get to engage in isn't just the typical training that we might have received before, that it does have a distance learning twist to it. And so, you named the Lucy Calkins, and actually what we found is they have pivoted in their units of study work to provide opportunities to focus on how do you do effective distance learning. And then we have some members of our team that have wanting to engage in some of the social emotional learning and some of that training to support our kids in that area around our counselors. And so we are seeing many more of our agencies coming out with support specifically around that. Tomorrow, Thursday, myself as Grant will be meeting with Momentum in Teaching. It's a group that they take a lot of the Lucy Calkins work, and they have pivoted as well to focus on a distance learning approach. So definitely keeping that top of mind. And one of the items I don't have on here, which was brought up this morning as well, was, and I'll be speaking about it in the next action item, is the piece around utilizing various applications and technology tools. And so we had a member of our team outreach to me today saying that she very much wanted to take the lead and support her colleagues with trying to engage in what are some highly effective technology tools that we could utilize in the distance learning mode. So definitely top of mind for sure.
The other thing that I don't see on here is around parent education. I know this says professional learning and planning, but I know that's been an ask, and I know that that's come up from the teacher side on the curriculum team of how important that's going to be. So I just, that might be something to think about. I know that there's trainings for teachers leading that with parents, but whatever kind of plan would be great to hear more about around how we're going to be doing some parent outreach and education.
Great. Any other board members?
Heather,
Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, I don't have anything else. I was just going to note that Erica's hand is still up, and we do have one other community member with a hand up. I just wanted to note that.
Okay, perfect. I will just, I just wanted to follow up one last thing from a board perspective, and then we can go into community questions. My only feedback, Davina, you stole it right out of my mouth, was related to the parent, because I think can all acknowledge that parents are an important part of this distance learning experience. And I think that cannot be underestimated in terms of bringing in parents early into the process. So we are strong partners in this process. And the other thing I think that, Raquel, you've already touched on this, is how important distance learning will be for us, likely for the entire year. Even when it is deemed safe that we can go back into classrooms, we will likely be going in and out of distance learning as just part of the overall school year. So this is, something that we should consider, not just as a temporary kind of Band-Aid fix, but this is to really dig in and make sure that we're doing this not in what I guess was called the crisis teaching in the spring, although I don't think it was quite that. I think it was much better than that, but just to know that this is something that is much more thoughtful and methodically done. And that's my only feedback on there. And so I think we can go to hands. It looks like Erica has put down her hand, and Annie has a hand up.
Let me find Annie here so I can.
Annie Ewan.
No, I don't see it up. That's weird.
She's under attendees, right under
Yeah.
Megan Dunn.
Oh, here we are. Here we are. Annie Ewan. There we go. Annie, you're on. Or you're allowed to talk.
I think she's still muted, Raquel,
Hmm.
maybe? Or maybe she muted herself.
Sorry, that was a mistake.
All good. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Raquel, is there a plan to have something akin to a virtual back to school night?
Yes, that is something that, I think I mentioned before, mirror our school day, so mirror our school year. So I would hope that, we can anticipate that we'll be announcing our back to school night, our open house, all those activities in a virtual format. Yes, I'm anticipating that for certain.
Okay, thanks.
Great. If there are no other questions, I think we can go into a vote if everyone's in agreement. All those in favor, and again, this is for the approval of the amount not to exceed $250,000 for professional development, as a reminder. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. All right. The last item on the action agenda is K1E. Is there a motion to consider the approval of the proposal in the amount not to exceed $100,000 to purchase additional instructional program licensing for items such as, but not limited to, formative assessment tools and digital platforms for student learning and teaching and necessary instructional materials?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
So, this one comes from the place of recognizing that we're going to need some additional technology platforms and resource materials. One I want to highlight for certain is a formative assessment tool. So we've heard from our community, we've heard from our teachers, our administrative team, the importance of trying to really have some strong tool that's available to us so that we can assess our students and where they're at. Does that get to happen before school actually starts on the 25th? I'm not sure yet, but I know there's interest in that possibility. Davina mentioned the opportunity to have those conferences and those intakes. And so how great would that be if we're able to have a strong tool to utilize as a source document to say where we believe kids are as they're getting to start the school year. So those are just, again, examples. The other piece that I heard or that I've had people ask me about was related to kids having their textbooks and or workbooks and such so that they could utilize versus, parents printing things out or doing stuff just digitally. And I know for my kids, we had learning kits in our house that were set up so that they would have their stuff that they needed to engage in their schooling. And so just acknowledging that there's additional resources that we're going to need and wanting to set aside some funds to support that.
Great. Thanks, Raquel, for the background. Any questions from board members?
Raquel, I would, I guess maybe in this category, piggyback on what Davina and Heather said in the prior category, which is to the extent there are resources that can be made available to parents. I mean, I think many of us were sort of bewildered in our role as learning coaches unexpectedly in the spring. And so if there are things, because many of the things in Common Core don't look the same as when we all learned them. And so it can actually be challenging to figure out the correct way to assist with some of these tasks. So just throwing that out there.
For sure. Anna, thank you for that.
Great. Anyone else? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. All right. Thank you.
Heather, I was late on unmuting, but I'm an I.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't think I heard everyone. Okay. Thanks, Sarah.
Sorry. I didn't click fast enough.
No, all good. All good. Okay. We're moving on to human resources section of the agenda. Is there a motion to consider the approval of the certificated salary schedules?
So moved.
Second.
Thanks, David. Discussion? Raquel, did you want to give any background to the next 3 items?
No, I actually don't have any background. What I can say is I understand that, this is based on the salary increase that was negotiated with the Kentville Teachers Association. And so I believe it's a 2.5% increase. So it's approving that. I think it would have happened typically a little bit earlier, but for whatever reason it didn't. And so that was through the negotiation process that ensued last fall, I believe.
Great. That's what I figured. I know that we usually did this earlier, but there were no changes. There was not kind of like a COVID change or something like that happened.
No.
They're just the standard process. Okay.
Yeah.
So with that, were there any questions from board members on this? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Is there a motion to consider the approval of the classified salary schedules?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Oppose? Motion carries. Is there a motion to consider the approval of the administrative and management salary schedules?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
So I did have a question on these because I noticed for several of the roles, there's an enormous amount of additional text that recites historical raises back to 2013. And I just don't know why we would need all of that detail on the salary schedule. I'm just wondering if those should be cleaned up and only have the reference for the current year, maybe. I was a little confused on, for example, the management salary schedule for the director of maintenance and director of technology, and also for the CBO, I believe. There's just a historical summary of all the different raises over the years. And I guess I don't see us needing to continue to have that on the salary schedule.
Agreed.
I had a similar question, but I was assuming that this was because it was used in negotiation documents, but not necessarily in any other place on our website, but maybe that can be clarified. It's a great question though, Sarah.
I don't recall it from negotiations myself for the parts that I was attending, but.
Yeah, I don't recall it from negotiations either.
Okay.
Administrative and management wouldn't be in negotiations, right? So the negotiations would specifically be for for the collective bargaining agreement with your Kentville Teachers Association.
So I guess, could we remove it, I guess is the question?
Right, so that would be my suggestion, that we remove all the lines between the salary schedule listed and the raise that's listed for the 2020-2021 year. What I can't tell though is whether the numbers that are included are already inclusive of that increase. I think they are, in which case I would add the word includes in front of the 2.5%. But I'm not sure, because it also says that this salary schedule for the CBO is effective May 1st of 2012.
Do you want, I don't have clarity on it either. So what I would suggest is that since we have some questions, instead of just approving them, I think maybe we should review and bring them back.
That's fine. I mean, to be clear, of course, I support whatever last year was with a 2.5% raise. That's not the issue. I just think we should maybe clean up the schedule so it's a little clearer.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm not, I agree. I feel uninformed to be able to say what the historical is there, and maybe it was just the formatting in the past. And so I'd want to ask a couple questions from staff prior.
And you know what, just to, Raquel, there's look on the, the middle school principal salary schedule, for example, they don't have the historical, but it just, the note said salary schedules will be increased annually by the fiscal year negotiated salary adjustment, whatever. I mean, it could be something as simple as that versus the historical line by line.
Okay.
It looks like Kirsten has her hand up. Maybe she has insight.
Maybe she can help. Yeah. Kirsten, you're good to talk, I think.
Am I good?
Yeah.
So what I wanted to mention is this format is carried forward from many, many, many years. And, but I would suggest that if the schedules are approved, because we can't pay the 12-month employees their July pay if the salary schedule is not approved. If it's formatting, that's another thing.
That makes sense.
Okay, I don't have any issue with that.
I'm supportive of that.
Okay. Does anyone else from the board have issue with that?
I'm supportive of that.
Okay. Davina, Sarah, okay with that?
I'm fine.
Great. Okay, so with that said, thank you, Kirsten, for chiming in. And so I think, I guess the takeaway is we can vote as is, but maybe we can look at the formatting, Raquel and Kirsten, for future references for this. Okay, so with that said, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Oppose? Motion carries. Great, okay. Final action item on resolution. Is there a motion to consider the approval of resolution number 1, California Schools and Local Communities Funding Act?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion. And just to remind everyone, this was the item that I think it was probably 2 meetings ago that from the League of Women Voters, a representative came forward to present this item for our consideration. And we decided in our last meeting that we would put it on a future agenda to vote on. And I think we all have the resolution, the sample resolution here. And I just wanted to provide a little context. I did some research this morning and just to look, they have a lot of endorsements. Some big ones there are the CTA, California Teachers Association, strong endorsements from unions. And then also many, many different school districts have also shown support. In Marin County, it looks like that the MCOE, the Marin County Office of Education, has already endorsed it, and many different individual trustees from different districts, Novato, San Rafael, for example. And I didn't see any other Marin individual districts that endorsed it yet, but that could be coming in the future. So that was the only context I wanted to share.
Heather, in the comments, Erica just noted that the California PTA has endorsed it as well.
Great, thank you, Erica, for noting that. Any feedback anyone wants to give?
Yeah, Heather, this is David. I'd be supportive of this resolution, supporting this initiative. I think we need to be much more forward with our support of alternative and new funding models. We have seen the devastation of school funding, and I think we need to be a leader in ensuring full and fair funding of schools. And I hope this is just the first of many things that we support like this, but I would be supportive of supporting this one as a first step.
Great, thanks, David. Beautifully said. I agree wholeheartedly. Nothing to add to that.
Yeah, I agree as well. I think all of us, especially having gone through our budget cuts last year, are painfully aware of the shortages in funding versus what we need to provide our students with the education we want to give them. So I'd be supportive of it as well.
Great. Any other feedback anyone wants to share now? All right, I think we can take this to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Oppose? Davina, I don't know if I heard from you on the, were you meaning to vote and you were on mute?
Yes, I'm good. I'm in agreement.
Perfect. Okay, oppose? Motion carries. Thank you.
Heather, Susan Warnock's hand is up.
Oh, great. Hi, Susan.
Let me see here. Susan, I think you can talk.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. I just wanted to thank the board for their support.
Wonderful. Thank you, Susan. No, I think, as I think everyone communicated, I think this is a very, very important initiative. And I'm proud that we will be the first district outside of the MCOE in Marin to show support for this. All right. Well, thank you. I think we'll move forward then to reports from the board. I know we've been in lots of meetings, but I think we can go through this pretty quickly if anyone wants to share. So I guess I'll start with myself. Usually we go backwards. I think the only thing to emphasize is that I just wanted to make everyone aware on the call, especially to our attendees, that I've been trying to attend as many different Zoom sessions offered and to gather as many different types of perspectives over, I mean, from everywhere from the MCOE sessions with Dr. Matt Willis on Thursdays, Governor Newsom's calls. I attended the Marin Educators for Safe Schools call on July 8th. And obviously the weekly office hours with Raquel, I find those highly informative. And I really enjoy listening to the types of questions that are raised. And the final one that I just wanted to acknowledge is that I sit on I was happy to accept the invitation to sit on the safety committee section of the Return to School Roadmap, broader work. And I was asked to wear the hat as a Kent parent, which I greatly enjoy, to take off the trustee hat for those meetings. And I just am so impressed, as I mentioned before, with the collaboration and the intentionality by all of the members. And these are meetings that are composed of all of our stakeholders in our community. And they're obviously happening over the summer, and a lot of hours are being spent thoughtfully and methodically going through all of these different items and responding, you know, in real time to all the shifts that are constantly coming out on a daily and weekly basis, it feels like. So those are my updates. I don't know if anyone else, will keep going down the list. Is there any further, Sarah?
Heather, I don't think I have anything to add. I'm not always making those meetings live, but many of the ones you're mentioning, I'm tuning into the recordings of, and obviously all of our board meetings that we've been having. So don't have anything to add.
Great, thanks. Kwok?
I would echo Sarah's sentiment, nothing to add.
Great, David?
I'm the same. You know, we've been so focused on Kent Field. I look forward to putting my head up and learning from other districts at some point, but just been focused on things here.
Great, Davina?
Nothing to add.
We could add one more, Davina, that I think it was good acknowledging in case we have any attendees. Both of us attended the office hours in Spanish that Raquel offered last week that I thought was highly informative. And if anyone is on this call or knows of any members of our community that would like to participate in the office hours in Spanish, they are available and they're great. It was nice to have Talia Milano volunteer to do the translation. She did an excellent job, and Raquel did a great job presenting. And it's so good that we are able to offer that. And it was the same information that's being presented in the office hours. And so I'd like to spread the word for those. And I know there are more happening in the future. And I think that's it. All right, so moving forward, future agenda items. Anything to add? Obviously in August, we'll go back to our normal meeting structure when we'll hear from site leaders and go through a more traditional agenda, but anything anyone wants to add?
Raquel, I'm just wondering, do you anticipate needing us to meet again before our next regularly scheduled meeting? It seems pretty likely, just given the shifting landscape. So I don't know what to agendize for it, but I have a feeling back to school is going to be front and center.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's high likelihood, and it might be worthwhile just to get some dates on the calendar so I can work with Maureen to do a poll of the board to get some dates for a special board meeting. How does that sound?
Sounds great.
Anyone else? Just as a reminder, Raquel, this is, I know, on your radar, is to add protocols to starting in August, that we'll start reviewing those on a monthly basis. And then also hopefully in our August meeting, we can start talking about committees again and kind of when, you know, and how kind of the structure for those and how those will roll out. Because they obviously all went on pause in the spring, but it'll be exciting to get those back up again, including our two newest committees, you know, in technology and equity. Those are the only items that I had for future. And, you know, and obviously, as everyone's is saying, front and center is the roadmap that Raquel's been doing such a great job in articulating. I think that's it. Great. Moving to pertinent dates. Just for everyone on the call, all of the board meetings have been added for the year, so you can mark your calendars now. See all of those listed all the way through June. and other dates will be continuing to be added, including all of the committees will be added to the pertinent dates. As well as I know that's a work in progress too, Raquel, but kind of all the, I know Sarah asked about this earlier, the back to school dates. As soon as we have sort of those, what those sessions will look like, we should get those added. All right. Moving forward to the debrief on the meeting and norms. Does anyone have any glow or grows they want to share? Board members, how we did?
I think found money is always a glow.
That's true. Good point, Kwok. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate everyone stepping up and taking the responsibility for being a leader in school funding and being out in front of that important topic. It affects everything we do, and I think we need to be leaders in that. So I was glad to see us do that.
Agreed, David.
In terms of a grow, we could get better at turning on our videos, but other than that.
We're showing growth mindset and accepting the way things are right now. But you're right. That's and I just wanted to acknowledge thank you for everyone's patience as we work through this meeting. And not being able to see faces and facial expressions and raising hands in the traditional sense. And a patience by all of our attendees. Thank you. This is obviously not the normal way that we conduct board meetings. So really appreciate everyone's flexibility and patience with this process.
And Heather, I guess I would just have one other glow, which is we don't usually have a July meeting. And I just want to acknowledge and appreciate how hard everyone, both on the board and on the staff, is working. And we've had extra meetings and we added a July regular meeting. So I appreciate the dedication that everyone is showing in figuring out how to do this right for our community in very challenging times.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you. All right, I think that's it. We are adjourning at 7:09. And again, just reminders for office hours and to contact us with any further questions that may come up after the meeting. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you, Raquel.
Thank you, Raquel.
Thanks, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Raquel.
Yeah. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.